Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome in to WDIA, the Bev Johnson Show. It is indeed a pleasure to have you with us once again. It is a Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016. Enjoy this fabulous day today. The Bev Johnson Show, we are live from Soulsville, USA. LeMoyne-Owen College, one of my favorite places in the world. We are here with our town hall meeting, Community Education 911, the urgency of a quality education and how the entire community plays a role. And we are going to be talking about that today. For all of our listeners in the city and across the country, how does education play a role in the community? It's an emergency. I'm calling it 911. And this forum, we're going to talk how each community leader plays a part. This is not a show of bashing or who's right or who's wrong, but we need to educate our children. That's my deal. I am a firm believer in education. And I believe with an education, you can do anything you want to do. So, this morning, it is Community Education 911 Town Hall Meeting. And I like to say, as we get started, before I introduce my guests and get started, I want to welcome, because they are so gracious to let us come to LeMoyne-Owen College. Please welcome Dr. Cheryl Golden, Vice President and Chief Academic Officer for LeMoyne-Owen College.
Thank you so very much. It is my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to LeMoyne-Owen College. On behalf of the President of LeMoyne-Owen, Dr. Andrea Lewis Miller, please accept our gratitude, Bev, for coming. We have just always respected your presence in this community, and certainly for this campus, for the Bev Johnson Show, to come here for a town hall meeting and to have these very auspicious guests to be on to serve on this panel. We're delighted to have you. We feel like we have the creme de la creme today. Welcome, please have your way. Please share any ideas as needed, and we'll be happy, of course, to respond. Glad to see the listening audience here. Know that you're welcome to the college. The college is this community. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cheryl Golden. Thank you, Dr. Golden. And in her absence, I have to say thank you to Dr. Andrea Miller, who was so gracious to say, yes, we can come to LeMoyne-Owen College. And before I introduce our guests to you this day, I'd like to say, and I want you to remember this if you don't remember anything else. In the end, we only regret the chance we didn't take, the relationships we were afraid to have, and the decisions we waited too long to make. Community Education 911. When we talk about community education, and everybody plays a part, and I'm just going to go down the line, so each of your opening statement with my question. What are some of the challenges that you see today in the community and the challenges of our children in the educational arena? What are some of the challenges and the problems facing our children in the education arena? And I want to start with, I was thinking about going down the line, but let me first start, I think, with our superintendents. And ladies first. I'll start with Dr. Anderson. What are some of the challenges you see for our young people facing education in the community?
One of the things that our kids are facing is a lack of resources at home. And by resources, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about the finer things in life. I'm talking about resources that are going to enrich learning, things like books in the home. Folks who are parents who are willing and have the time and the ability to be able to read to their kids and to respond to their children, particularly when they are young. When that does not happen, we have students who are coming into kindergarten who have vocabulary levels that are much lower than they should be, and it makes it very difficult for them to read. And so that kind of lack of support and resources at home that we can support by community members reaching out and partnering with families and parents to ensure that there are books in every single one of our kids' homes would go a long way toward improving the education of our kids.
Dr. Superintendent Hopson.
So if I could echo that, before I do that, I want to take just a couple seconds and thank our wonderful teachers and school leaders for the amazing work that they're doing every single day. You know, there's always this kind of negative aura or perception with the school district, but the Shelby County schools for the last 4 years have been a level 5 TBOS school district. We improved in 9 of 10 tested areas last year, and they're doing some amazing work in our I-zone, and that's directly a result of the hard work of our teachers and principals, so I want to acknowledge that. And I guess to answer to your question, Bill, I would have to echo what the superintendent said. At the end of the day, the biggest challenge that I see is just this suffocating poverty that grips our community. We've got about 40,000 kids who live in households where the income is less than $10,000 a year, and what that leads to is home situations where even parents who really want to be more involved oftentimes can't. You know, if you're working 2 or 3 jobs, it's difficult to help your child with their reading assignment. And then some of the situations that many of our students live in many instances, resemble more of a third world country than a major metropolitan city. So when you're dealing with the drugs, when you're dealing with the crime, when you're dealing with all the trappings of poverty, it just has an adverse effect on, many times it creates an additional barrier for kids as they try to use the education system. But that's, you know, really a fact. It's not an excuse because we have so many hard-working students. One comes to mind, Delarante over at Melrose last year, came from just a very tough situation, and he rose through that, got a full ride to Stanford. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to create structures so that our very impoverished students can use our educational system to change their circumstances in life. And I know everybody up here on this panel is working towards that.
You mentioned, Dr. Hopson, and I want to go, you mentioned about crime and poverty, and this is where I want to bring in Lieutenant Curry, who works with young people from the Memphis Police Department in crime. It seems like, Lieutenant Curry, that crime is going rampant. But with our young people now, it seems like they're living now a life of crime instead of trying to get that education. What are you seeing in the schools? How are you all helping the Memphis Police Department?
Thank you, Bill. First of all, let me thank you and WDIA for hosting such a forum so we can educate the entire community that your radio station reach. And secondly, let me thank Commissioner Love. When I was assigned to the community outreach program about 2.5 years ago, she was one of the first people I met. And her question was pretty much like yours. What are you going to do? What are you all going to do in the community outreach program to help our children save their lives? And we sat down and we talked. And we created what we called the Memphis Police Department Youth Crime Watch program. It was her idea. We took it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to give that because you'll see where I'm going. And she introduced me to Superintendent Hopson, and he gave us permission to go in the schools and build a relationship with the staff in the schools and the teachers in the school. Because we thought, and we're in the community probably more than the parents. We see these children on a daily basis when they're not in school. And while talking to them, they tell us nobody really cares. Nobody's listening to us. We have no hope. We're hungry. And my parents have no food, no monies to buy us clothes. And they said, we have to go out here and defend for ourselves. We must survive. And sometimes that means perpetrating crime on each other. And we try to tell them it's another way to go. Work hard, go to school, get your education. What do you need for us to help you? And that's how I met many folks on your panel and in your audience there. And they've been trying to tend to the needs of these children. So first of all, they gotta feel safe.
Okay.
And if they don't feel safe, they can't go to school and study. They gotta feel non-threatened while they're in this education environment. So we try to provide a safe mechanism, and we try to bring all these different entities together to let them know, please listen to these young folk. They have ideas. And we just left Memphis Business Academy, and we asked the children to participate in a crime prevention essay contest to come up with innovative ways and techniques on how they can make their schools and their environment safer. And if you notice, there's been crime in the community, but very little crime has been reported in the schools. And we think these children have taken the lead in their learning, and they're being part of solving this criminal element. So with that said, the police has a very integral part to play, because we out there, we can listen and we can direct them in the right direction, and we must educate them on crime so they will be productive while they try to get their education.
And if they're productive, they won't cause the crime. And that's where you, Attorney Coupe, comes in from the Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court, because you see a lot of young people come there. And I know that you are working hard to not see a lot of young people at the juvenile court. Tell us what you all are doing.
I can lean over a little bit here. Yeah, a couple things I want to touch on first. The first question, getting back to where we are and what our concerns are.
Okay.
The court just took a full court training in what's called trauma-informed training, so this court can be a trauma-informed court. I also heard Superintendent Hopson mention the word adverse. We're also in the process of understanding adverse child experiences and how these things affect the kids that come to our court. So we don't put our values on what we think and understand where kids are coming from, what families are coming from, and understanding that these children are going through traumatic experiences in their lives right now. You have a parent who's working not at home, multiple children in the home. Those situations affect them in much different ways than a lot of people that work at the court would ever understand. So we're getting a better grasp on how to really work with these kids to understand their problems and concerns. Getting to the actual issue of juvenile delinquency. Here's a good note, and I'm kind of spitballing this number, but about 110,000 kids in the Shelby County school system, is that right? About 110,000? Okay.
Superintendent Hopson?
Give or take.
Last year, juvenile court had 7,000 kids for any charge at all come through our court. That means
Wait a minute, 7,000?
7,000. That means 103,000 kids, school-age kids, didn't come through our system last year at all.
Okay.
And a lot of those kids in the 7,000 are probably repeat customers. We only transferred to adult court 40 kids last year. So 110,000 kids in our school system, 40 were transferred. That means 109,960 didn't do the worst of the worst. And so there's a lot of positive there too. Our referrals 2 or 3 years ago were over 10,000. Now we're at 7,000. So our overall transports to juvenile court, our petitions to juvenile court are going down. Now we see a lot in the news right now with kids, and you hear the narrative that juvenile crime is running wild, kids are acting crazy. And sure, there are certain things that are going wrong in our communities, but the general trend is that juvenile crime is actually going down, and that's a good thing. Our school referrals have gone down over 60% thanks to a fantastic program called Shape that the court has been involved with previously the Memphis City schools and now with the Shelby County schools, in which we try to keep kids from entering what's called the school to prison pipeline. We want to address kids at an early situation in their behavioral career and keep them from coming into the juvenile system. The longer a juvenile stays out of the juvenile system, period, the better outcomes that child will have. There's more that I can talk about later, I'm sure, and I'll let you pass on.
When we look at helping the community and educating our children, one of the things that we hear a lot of is our young people don't have anything to do. They don't have any jobs. Well, the city of Memphis has been trying. This is why I bring you in, Ike Griffin, who is Director of Youth Services. How are you all helping with our children and educating in the community? And I know, congratulations, you're a new director in the new administration, but tell us what you all are doing.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Bev, for having me on. I think one of the things, before I answer that question, is we got to let our young people understand that if you're not college bound, there's still alternatives for you to be a productive individual in our society. We cannot afford to let zip codes determine a child's destiny. And once we understand that fact, now we can reach out to that individual. Our children are exposed to a lot, okay? Now you can come with that SpongeBob SquarePants attitude if you want to. They're looking at Cookie and Lucius. And we got to reach them on that
level. Say that
level,
again, brother.
Okay? We got to reach them on that
level. They looking at who?
Level. Lucius and Cookie.
I hear you.
And we got to reach those individuals and give them guidance along the way. I think one of the things that we should embrace is enhancing our vocational ed courses, because I think children may not be college material, but they can work with their hands, okay? We had shoe repair. We got a dry cleaning plant in one of our high schools right now. Computer repair.
What are they doing with that? Do you know? I'll ask Superintendent later on. Go on.
You know, enhancing those vocational ed courses to make sure that that child feel embraced, okay? That they are part of this problem, and we want to help them to solve it. You know, we have a lottery with two programs called Employ and MAP, Memphis Ambassadors Program. And what I'm trying to do this year, I want to create another component I call Operation Restart. It's a pilot. And I want to target truant and at-risk children, okay? Let them have a sense that they can be employed too. Now, as you know, the mayor is a big component of cleaning up our neighborhood's blight. There's money already earmarked for that. Let those individuals clean up around the neighborhoods and around the schools and get paid for it. Ms. Stephanie Love is on my committee to help me with that. And we identifying those students. So just to kind of sum up, it's going to be very important that we reach all our children, not just a few, and we make it rewarding for them. I think a lot of times our children feel like they're not loved, not wanted. They may not get it from home, but when they see individuals in the community that's reaching out to try to help them, they know. I promise you, they know. And they will listen. They will take what you have worth millions just to help them get out of a situation. So I think, in summing up, you know, reaching out to these young people, letting them know that they feel like they are part of this problem, and we're going to help them solve it also. Thank you.
Dr. Fincher, that Ike mentioned about the workforce, and you come in with the Greater Memphis Alliance for a Competitive Workforce. Well, if young people don't have an education, how can they get into the workforce?
Well, certainly in today's global economy, with the pressure on our businesses to compete in a very different environment than they may have competed in 20 years ago, a skill set is essential. For us, with our alliance, our job is to work with our great education providers in the community and help develop new, more relevant models to connect young people with the workplace. At the end of the day, the litmus test for any educational model should be, does it lead to a great career? Can you find a job that then affords you the opportunity to get a better job, and then yet a better job beyond that? Unfortunately, a lot of our models in the past have been, and particularly in technical education, have been focused on jobs that may not have had the career evolution opportunities that we would hope. So for many people, it's not very motivating to understand or believe that I'm going to be doing this $9 an hour job for the rest of my life. We've got to find a way to connect what we're doing educationally to the workplace and make certain that our young people understand that they have a path to prosperity, to safety, to a different quality of life, simply by improving what they learn and their capacities and talents that make them more marketable. to echo some of what has been said, I have been a high school principal. I worked in the public schools for several years before coming to Eastern Arkansas, and then worked in the public schools across the river for a couple of years before moving into the community college environment. And our educational systems are filled with talented professionals doing the very best they can. They get up every morning and pray for guidance and go work hard and try to help as many people as they can that day. Our systems in this country of educating people were never designed to handle the problems that our society is throwing at it. So we need to be supportive and work as hard as we can to engage and participate in the educational process. When we walk away from it, when we turn our head and say it's hopeless, when we decide that there's absolutely nothing we can do to improve it, then we have failed. We've failed as a community, and we've certainly failed as a nation. Memphis has a tremendously bright future, but that future is only as bright as our ability to change the models for how we educate young people and put them in a position to move beyond poverty, move off of dependence to independence, put them in a position to understand that I have a chance to move out of this circumstance. There's probably not very many people on this panel today that would be here today if we had grown up in the world that our children are growing up in. And we have to understand that, and we have to compensate for it, and what we have to do is never lose hope that we can improve it.
Yeah. Pastor Gino, and something that Dr. Fenter said, that we didn't grow up in the world that it is now. We grow up, and I know that the faith-based community was essential. I went to church. I had to go to church. I had to go to Sunday school and all the other stuff. How is the faith-based community, and with you, what you're doing to help our young people in this education dilemma?
Well, Bev, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me, allowing me to be here, and to Doctors Miller and Golden for allowing us to have it here. Well, you know, when you look back in the day, everybody went to church because I believe that the African-American community survived because of the power and the centrality of the African-American church. Everybody went to church. Mama went to church. Even if Dad didn't, he sent everybody to church to make sure that because it was our place of power. Think about it. It was the place that we owned for us, by us, our money. All of those things was there in the African-American church. But the shift has happened because the church has shifted its lens. No more do we look at community and the cause of Christ. A lot of churches are only going for cash, cameras, and crowds. So when you look at that, we're not looking at the social justice issue that is supposed to be done in the African-American church as it was at one time. So if the church is supposed to be in charge of the community, then we need to have after-school programs at the church for the young people. We need to make sure that we are opening schools for the young people and doing all of those things. Second, we also have to not ignore the elephant in the room, and that, of course, is systemic poverty and institutionalized racism. We have to deal with that. When you went to the black church back in the day, they taught you that they would reconstruct your black identity and they would give you assurance of God's grace. Nowadays, when we talk about institutionalized racism, we have to understand that the prison or cradle to prison pipeline that Mr. Coupe mentioned is a real thing, because in America we've shifted what the criminal looks like. Back in before the 80s, the criminal was John Gotti, all of those people. They were celebrated criminals. But when crack cocaine hit the street, the criminal became young, black, and male. And art imitated life, so you saw that in Nino Brown, in New Jack City, and all of those things. And the police were in many ways seemingly trained, according to Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, to target these young people more so at a pandemic rate of African-American, brown, and black people. So all of that hits us at the same time, inside and outside the church. So we just can't hang it on the church and say, well, back in the day we went to church. Church has to shift its way back to loving these young people and providing things for them to do.
Bev,
Superintendent,
Bev,
okay, sure.
I just almost said preach.
I know, come on, I know. Hey, I know. And on that note, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, Oh, I love it. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the community is being successful. So we'll get Mr. White in, and Commissioner Avant will get you in, and then, because I want all of you all to speak, and we'll also get in Dr. Calhoun, because after that, we want him to come to higher education. Yeah. So when we come back, we'll also take questions from our audience as well. You're listening to the Bev Johnson Show. It's Community Education 911 Town Hall meeting on WDIA. Good morning and welcome back to the Bev Johnson Show. Town Hall meeting, Community Education 911. We have been talking about some of the challenges facing our young people in education. Want to get back, great discussion. I'm loving it. Want to get in because we hear a lot of negative talk about our communities. And one community we hear a lot of negative talk, Fraser community. But I understand that community is being turned around because of Mr. Bobby White, who's the founder and the CEO of the Fraser Community Center School there. And Mr. White, what makes you so different? How did you do that with Fraser?
Well, as everyone said before me, I want to just thank you for allowing us to be here. I'm a proud graduate of LeMoyne-Owen College, and so this is pretty special to me. So I have to say, first of all, to your question, just the thought process around my people. So Attorney Coupe mentioned and said that our babies were repeat customers. So that's not terminology that I would ever use. So what I see those young people as being are children that are mired in a nihilistic thought process and a hopelessness that is associated with poverty in America. We have to think about this thing in a big picture. The schools that we have were never designed to create leaders and critical thinkers. They were designed to produce laborers and prisoners. Okay. With that being said,
wait a minute, Mr. White, are you saying the schools now?
The greatest social institution in our country, our schools, is not rocket science how to fix them.
Okay.
Are we being honest with ourselves about actually wanting to fix them? If 12, 16 years from now, every kindergartner were to graduate from college, that's a kindergartner today, and are critical thinkers and demand their seat at the table, is America ready for them to be at that seat? Since America is not ready for them to be at that seat, we continue to perpetuate this cycle of mediocrity in our schools, specifically our schools in impoverished neighborhoods. That's the reality. So to your question specifically, I come at it from the standpoint that I want every student that I come in contact with to be better and greater than me. And if they can be better and greater than me coming from the same neighborhood that I came from and do things at a level greater and are critical thinkers, and we can touch that many students along with their parents, there's a ripple effect. And before you know it, you got a nation of people that you can't hold back, right? So it starts with the thought process that this child too can be successful. And from that, it drives everything that I do. My actions are grounded in belief in my people, in the students that we serve. That's what it's grounded in. Now, all of the specifics that go along with that, the logistics of teaching and learning, I mean, Dr. Anderson can speak to that a lot better than I can, you know, but in regards to just how do you get the people rallied around and galvanized around the vision and mission, it's around your true beliefs. Fundamentally, what do you believe? Folks spit this out all the time about we believe that all kids can learn at a high level. But what do their actions say? And when their actions don't fit that, then you know they're just talking educational jargon and they're not true to the beliefs that they have. Right?
Yeah. Commissioner Avant, as a Shelby County School Board member and as members, are you all thinking about helping our children being critical thinkers? Are you all thinking and hoping in the programs and the things that come up that you're going to excel these children, whether they intend to go to college or somewhere else? What does the school board members say? What are you all doing?
Thank you, Bev, for having us today, and I'm really happy to be on a panel of so many different people with different expertise, because I think we've talked a lot about how community has to be a part of this, how churches have to be a part of this, and the school system can't do all of these things that we're talking about without all of those partners at the table. So the school system, yes, as board members, we believe that children can learn and can become critical thinkers. However, we have to have programs in place with a rigorous curriculum that supports our children getting there. But we, as a school system, weren't really designed to take care of all of the other things that come when our children walk in the door each day. Hungry. Their parents have not been home in 2 days. With all of the things when we think about with poverty, our city has a 28% poverty rate. One of the poorest communities in this city, 3812, zip code 38126, has a poverty rate of 68%. So you think about when our kids come into our schools and they are faced with crime-ridden neighborhoods, they have lack of education, all of those things were not, when we designed our school system, that we had social workers and we had behavioral health therapists. So that's why I think it's important for us to talk about everyone's participation in helping our kids move to be those critical thinkers, to be part of this global, be global citizens prepared to enter the workforce. So it's important for us to think about the youth serving agencies, like our Boys and Girls Clubs, our streets ministries, places that can help support some of the needs that our kids come to us with. But it includes the police department. It includes our youth services at the city of Memphis. It includes our churches. That used to be the foundation of how we knew our kids were grounded within communities. So in order for Shelby County schools to be successful, it takes everyone in this room to help us to move that way.
Dr. Calhoun, once young people are finished in the school systems, wherever, and they may choose a higher education, but sometimes when they're coming to higher education, there is something that is really not happening. Also, you were instrumental in also bringing the Hollis Price Middle College here at LeMoyne-Owen College. Yes. What do you, before you answer that question, and me also being a college professor at Southwest Tennessee Community College, and this is what I say, oh my God. And the reason I say that, because the freshmen that I see, Dr. Calhoun, now, they're not ready. I'm telling y'all, some of them, they are not ready. Dr. Calhoun.
Again, thank you, Bev. If we have to realize, number one, LeMoyne-Owen College is in that 38126 zip code. And we receive a large majority of the student population within that zip code. And the reality is, a number of the students who come into LeMoyne-Owen College are not college ready. But as a commitment, and with a commitment to educate, we can't turn those young people out into the street, because then we are turning them into those elements. Yes, they come in with issues in critical thinking. Our goal is to channel them into a profession and teach them how to become professionals and how to become gainful individuals in society. But in order to do that, we must now take a step back and teach them how to formulate information, how to organize information, and even how to speak. Many of our children that come in, and I use children because I'm an educator, I'm a practitioner, so they're all children to me. But many of them come into our classrooms so deficient that it actually extends the regular 4-year anticipated graduation process. Now our students do well to graduate in 6 years. We have a large majority of our students who are having to take remedial courses. So I understand totally what you're saying by our students not being ready. But we as educators, and I'm speaking of LeMoyne-Owen College, I'm not talking about any other college at this point. We have a different demographic, and we must treat that demographic differently. If they're not ready as college students, we can't teach them as college students in order for them to be successful. We have to reach down and grab them where they are, and we have to work and bring them up to becoming in a position where they can actually become professionals.
But Dr. Calhoun, and it's always been said that HBCUs, we embrace our students.
Yes.
And those students who come in who may have a hard time, we love on them, we embrace them, and they grow up and grow out to be something wonderful.
Yes.
Why is it necessary to give them that little extra
Well, we not only give it to them, but we find ourselves giving it to their parents also. We have a number of advising sessions, not with just students. Many times we actually have parents that come in and say, that will say, my child needs this. I know my child is missing this. What can you do to help them? And once we, of course, get the permission from that child to talk with that parent, we then work with parents to help us to get those students ready. We have to be open and honest.
Okay.
And, we have to lay out the blueprint. We say, this is where your child is. This is what your child wants to be. Now let's look at the steps in between. And it's going to take more than my work here at the college and your child's work here at the college. It's also going to involve you. And a lot of times it's going to involve you encouraging and loving on your child at home. And we're going to love on your child here. Because we treat students here oftentimes like they are our children. Because we have, as teachers, we have that stake in them. And we want them to be successful.
Go on.
So being a LeMoyne-Owen graduate, I have to speak, this is pretty personal to me.
Okay.
So I started out at a larger university to play football, University of Tennessee Martin.
Okay.
What I needed, based on some of the comments I made earlier, I needed to be poured into I needed to realize that I was great. Because at the high school that I attended, that was a part of the establishment that I talked about earlier, they didn't pour into me. And so I left high school just with this idea that I'm going to go to college. Never thought the thought of being great. I'm just a normal person. I attended UT Martin and I got lost. And I enrolled at LeMoyne-Owen College. And Dr. Randolph Meade Walker looked at me in my eyes and said, you're going to be great. And I will not allow you to enter my classroom again and give a presentation with that outfit on. From that day forward, nobody's ever seen me without a tie on. He helped me to understand that I was going to be great and I was going to one day lead. And that wouldn't have happened had I not come to this institution. So I think that it's about expectations and people being concerned about those that they have and giving them that expectation and pushing them towards it. At a larger institution, some of us are ready for that. I just wasn't. And I think that a lot of the schools that the students are coming from that are enrolling at LeMoyne, they need what LeMoyne has to offer. They probably would get lost at a UT Martin or UT Knox or it's just the same way that I did. So.
I want to remind our listeners that if you're on social media, you can ask your questions on Facebook or Twitter. We will take those questions and answer those questions as well. And also want to remind, I am so proud to have Shelby County Schools Telecommunications is here, and the GM Stephanie Everson and Mr. John Best. And you can listen online at thevoiceofscs.com and also Cable 19 TV. I want to bring in, because Commissioner Love, could you come to that microphone? Because Dr. Calhoun said something that is very, 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 when you said the word parents, and I know Commissioner Love, as a parent, before you're commissioner, you work in the community. How are you all getting these parents involved?
Well, I can only speak for me. I'm telling them the truth. You know, we have so many special interest groups in all of these communities that are not really telling parents the truth. The truth is the parent is the child's first teacher. The truth is if the parent doesn't value education, we're going to have a hard time making that child or helping that child to value education. Superintendent Hopson, I know the perception of him may be one thing, but people know me, I'm not a liar. Superintendent Hopson, he really and truly wants to do the right thing. He inherited a school system that had so many ills. And what we're trying to do, it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings because we're actually trying to do the right thing. So I just want to personally commend Superintendent Hopson for the work that he's doing, as well as my fellow board member. Mr. Bobby White, my son attends his school, which is a charter under the ASD. Regardless of how I feel about the system, I know that Mr. White is going to make sure my son comes out of that school knowing that he's great. My son, 16 years old, got in trouble a lot. You know, wasn't that good kid. You know, but when Mr. White tells me the difference that he sees in my son, when my son wants to go to school every day, participate in things every day, decides to change the whole group of kids that he hangs around with, you know, now he's considered a nerd. You know, but to have that type of influence, to see the children in the community, when we talk about community, the children, they're wearing their school colors with pride. They're wearing their uniforms with pride. They're proud to go to the schools. You know, and we don't see that with a lot of charters. So it takes a special kind of person to work with my child, I know. So, you know, I just want to commend Mr. White and Superintendent Hopson, but as a parent, I have to make sure my children get to school on time. I have to make sure my children are doing their homework. I have to make sure that regardless of the issues that I have as an adult, my children are going to get what they deserve.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we have a lot of domestic violence, drug abuse, baby daddy, baby mama issues. That's not going to stop me from making sure my children are great. That's not going to stop me from making sure that if my children go to school and they're not prepared to learn, the teachers know to call me. Because mama going to come put them in a place so they are prepared to learn. It's not, I don't expect the teachers to raise my child. I'm going to raise my children.
But Commissioner, how do you get other parents to be like you? Like, look, I want excellence. I want you to be great. Because we have a lot of parents who will come up and they'll buff the teachers and buff the police. How do you get that mindset?
Slowly but surely is happening. I get phone calls, emails, text message, inboxes on Facebook, and the simple question is, what do I need to do? How can I do this? But a lot of parents feel as if the school systems has failed them. A lot of parents feel as if, I mean, the state has failed them. Look at the situation that we're in now. You know, we're suing the state of Tennessee because they're not funding education. We're suing the state of Tennessee because we have so many issues that we can't handle as a school system, and all we're saying is help us so we can help the children. But you know, it takes for parents to understand that they have somebody who cares, somebody who's going to keep it real with them. I'm not going to tell you you're doing right by going up there cussing the principal out or cussing the teacher out. I'm going to pull you to the side and say, hey, let's handle it this way. You know, you might want to think about this. If you have all these gang members in your house, I'm going to tell you that may not be the right choice that you want to make. I'm going to keep it real with you. You know, I can't sugarcoat anything, but I see that when people have somebody they can relate to who has been through the same situations and lived the same life that they've lived, they turn around. Slowly but surely it's coming, and the only thing I can do is continue to work with the help of the others in the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Superintendent Hopson, I was coming to you. That's some things she said. Go right ahead.
I just want to piggyback on that. I just want to thank Ms. Love for the shout out. You know, I have worked with school boards across the country for many years in my capacity as a lawyer and superintendent, and I mean this with all my heart. I have never met a school board member with more passion for her community than Ms. Love, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. She may smack me around every now and then at a school board meeting too, but I know it always comes from the heart, comes from the right place, and that's priceless. I think, just to piggyback on that, I mean, we really have to have a culture of personal responsibility. I think that Bobby mentioned, you know, some of the ills in terms of schools and strategies. You know, we talk about Common Core. The whole purpose of Common Core was to get to put in a strategy to teach people to think, to be thinkers, as opposed to memorizers and regurgitators. So school has a lot of responsibility there, and we've got to do better there. But at the end of the day, Bev, parents can't get a pass. I mean, I'm a product of a single-family home. I got a lot of drug addicts and drug dealers in my family, too. I've seen all of that, you know, the ills that go along with poverty. But at the end of the day, I had a parent that took responsibility. And all too often what happens is people want to put it all on the schools. I think Ms. Avant said it best. Like, we've got a huge obligation to improve the educational system in this community. We all own that, and we're all working to do that. But at the end of the day, the school can only do so much. And if you are sending your child to school, you haven't spent any time loving on your kid, you haven't made sure your kid is fed, you haven't done your best to make sure your kid is clothed, shame on you. And there's some people, though, who obviously you have different situations of circumstances where people try to do their best. If you're doing your best, you're doing your best. But I know Ms. Love can tell you about plenty of folks who spending money at the club, you know, spending money to get a new outfit, and you won't send your baby to school because you don't have any shoes. Shame on you. And I think we got to stop pointing the finger. Again, we want to be pushed because, again, I think the Shelby County schools has come a long way, but we went through the largest school merger in U.S. history just 3+ years ago, and the bet was the school wasn't even going to open. So we got school open, we're showing improvement, we've got a long way to go, but at the end of the day, we wouldn't even be having this 911 conversations if parents were doing what they were supposed to do. And I can say that out of love.
Okay.
I went to, as a pastor said, I used to have to go to Vacation Bible School right around at the old Mississippi Boulevard Church right there on Wicks, you know, and Mississippi Boulevard. So I grew up in that same community, and you just remember back then, you know, nobody was perfect, but there was always a culture of personal responsibility, and then B, people weren't afraid to call people out. So I'm calling the parents out who ain't doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
That's right.
And I hope that we're going to do our best. I'm calling them out in love, but if we could get the parents to do what they're supposed to do, and also, I look at the faith-based community too. We've got so many churches here, Bill. I share with you, I actually got a chance to run a half a marathon last week, so I was training a couple weeks before, so my mom lives in Whitehaven, so I'm running up Elvis Presley. Ran about 3 miles on Elvis Presley. I counted 10 churches. And Whitehaven has some of the highest unemployment, lowest literacy rates in this community. So what if the churches could come up with a strategy where they could link arms and be supportive of just 10 kids in some way? That would make a significant difference. So I would ask our faith-based community, I know there's some stuff in the works to continue to work, to continue. Don't do it for the school system, do it for the kids. Right. Do it for these students, do this as a faith-based leader. You know, we often ask ourselves, you remember the bracelets, what would Jesus do? Yes. Well, Jesus wouldn't let all these kids sit around here, can't read, uncared for, undereducated, when you got a whole flock of folks, a lot of retired teachers, a lot of teachers now. So I ask that we all lock arms and do that for our babies.
Okay. Ms. Griffin.
I just want to piggyback on Superintendent Hopson. I think 2 components that we have been talking about that are missing: prayer and discipline. When you take God out of the picture, these are our consequences that we're facing. You got to realize that we live in a city with over 100,000 people that cannot read or write. They don't know how. They need help, and we're trying to embrace them. You know, God doesn't give us things that we can handle. He helps us handle what we are given. Now, we got a horrific task on our hand. And until we understand that fact, we're going to continue to talk about this in years to come. Discipline doesn't have to be physical, but I heard school board member, Ms. Love, she makes. That's discipline. You understand? The gentleman that said a few minutes ago that his teacher told him he's not coming back in his classroom like that again. That's discipline.
Yeah.
So you got to understand that we have to reach out, but be aggressive. Okay?
I got you.
You know, you got to be aggressive because our children, this day and time, are exposed to so much without guidance. And until we understand that fact, we're going to be talking about this in years to come, as I mentioned. Thank you.
We are talking Community Education 911 Town Hall meeting here in Soulsville, USA, LeMoyne-Owen College. We will be talking more. Don't forget social media. Get your questions in on Facebook or on Twitter. We will answer your questions. We are having a good time today. You're listening to The Bev Johnson Show on WDIA. You're listening to The Bev Johnson Show on WDIA. We are so happy to have all of our guests here, Attorney Thomas Coupe, Pastor Gino Gibson, Ike Griffin, Superintendent Dorsey Hopson, Dr. Malika Anderson, Dr. Ralph Calhoun, Dr. Glenn Finter, Mr. Bobby White, Lieutenant Tyrone Curry, and School Board Commissioner Shante Avant is here, as well as Commissioner Stephanie Love and City Councilman Martavis Jones. I'll hook y'all up together. Before, you may have questions on Get You Ready, but they are listening all across the country. And in Nashville, I wanted to read this email from State Representative Antonio Parkinson. He says, first of all, Bev, we love Bobby White. Representative Parkinson also said, first, if the state were serious about education in Shelby County, they would fully fund the BEP. The state would also ensure that they were not raping the local school system of resources by sending in ASD vouchers and other resource filtering agents. Lastly, the state has contracts with private prisons that more than anything speaks to the state's intent regarding education. The state has a signet bed contract with private prisoners to keep the prison at 90% capacity, or the state will be fined. The uneducated will fill those beds. State Representative Antonio Parkinson, going back to that, what he's talking about, I want to get to Attorney Coupe. And we see young people going to prison. Is the Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court trying to defer some of that? How are you all working to the community to stop seeing those young people? And then some of those young people, as you said, Attorney Coupe, who make it to adult court.
Yeah, one of the most important things, and I touched on this earlier, was that juvenile law itself is a law, an area of law that is still evolving. Without getting into a long discussion about it, the first child abuse law, and this is obviously not juvenile delinquency, but the first child abuse law was actually prosecuted under an animal abuse law because there were no child abuse laws on the books back in the early 1900s. And so we're working with a time frame of about less than 100 years in which we have decided that children deserve protections. Children didn't have the same rights as adults did, to the right to an attorney, a lot of the other Fourth Amendment rights, until the 1960s. Even until the 1990s and 2000s, there has been children haven't been protected the same way adults have, and the federal government and state governments haven't been nearly as concerned about the rights of children and how they're treated not only in the foster care system, but also in the juvenile delinquency system. Obviously, the Department of Justice is involved with Shelby County. We've worked with them, and we are becoming one of the leaders in hopefully changing the context of the way juvenile delinquency is addressed, not only in Shelby County, in Tennessee, but in the nation. To that extent, the most important thing when dealing with juvenile issues is to keep children out of the system as long as possible. This is a crazy stat, but you can take two kids, 15 years old, ask them one question each. First question to one child is, have you ever been into a juvenile detention center? Don't care how long, just simple detention center, yes or no. Ask another child, are you in a gang? The child who says yes to being a gang and the child who says yes to being in a juvenile detention center. The child who has said that he has been in a juvenile detention center has a greater chance of being imprisoned as an adult, as an identified gang member. So that's how serious it is to make sure children do not get into our system in the first place. We have worked long and hard with the Memphis Police Department to implement a summons program in which children charged with small, basically misdemeanors, aren't brought into the juvenile system. We don't want a kid who's brought in for a simple assault. We don't want a kid who's brought in for gambling, for simple possession, those sorts of things. Other jurisdictions take those kids and bring them to the detention center. We don't allow that. With the schools, we've worked with the SHAPE program to keep kids who are having the same types of issues, simple assaults, a fight. When I was growing up in school, kids got in fights. The police didn't get called. The kids went to the principal's office, and the parents dealt with it. Now, there's been so much of a concern, let's call the police, let's haul them to this. We don't want that problem, send them to the detention center. And unfortunately, in our community, it's African-American kids, and they're the ones that are getting the brunt of the problem. So when they're getting sent to the detention center, they now become that question, have you ever been to a juvenile detention center? And that's where the problems arise. So we're working on those issues. Like I said before, becoming a trauma-informed court, getting better understanding of the kids that are coming before us, making sure that the judges and magistrates who hear the cases are more understanding of what is going on in the whole picture of things, instead of making a decision about a child based on what they see from what's being prosecuted. Defense, we're making sure the defense bar at our juvenile court is better, making sure they're more responsive, taking better efforts to defend the clients that they have taken on. We've brought the public defender into the juvenile court system. Now they are actually trying to become a model themselves for juvenile delinquency, taking a very small number of cases and really focusing on making those cases their focus. And so those are ways in which we're trying to address the juvenile delinquency issue here. Obviously, with we're trying to work with the legislature to focus on legislation that's out there that affects kids, to make sure that not only our community, but the state in a bigger sense follows some of the trends that we're learning and that we're gaining. One of the great things that Judge Michael has proposed is to extend juvenile jurisdiction beyond the age of 18 and 19 and keep that until age 25, because what we're learning, and this is probably one of the most important things that I know other educators, other people here can talk about, is the brain science development has become such an important component of juvenile delinquency and understanding juveniles that people don't grow in their brains until age 25. And that's why you see auto insurance rates go down at 25. You can't run for U.S. Congress until you're 25. You can't do other things until age 25 because people recognize that folks aren't really grown up. I know I wasn't grown up when I was 22 and 23 and 24, let alone 16, 17, and 18. And if we can keep those kids and give them better rehabilitative options at 18, 19, 21, 22, instead of saying, hey, at 18, you commit a crime or you're just going to go to general population in the adult system, that doesn't do those kids any good. Education, rehabilitation, counseling, whatever the case, job training, whatever the case may be, and get those kids out more equipped to get back, if they do actually have to go into some sort of long-term confinement, come back out more equipped than just coming out and saying, hey, here's your 6 years, now go on. So we really want to address that issue too and keep those kids in our system, get them and put them in a better position. And our detention centers aren't private, at least, so that's good.
Dr. Finter, do you start early in the workforce, getting these young people in the community and the community, the workforce community, embracing these young people?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time earlier defending our school systems, and they deserve to be defended, they deserve to be supported, but they also have to be challenged and recognize that our world of work is a much different place today than it's ever been in our lifetimes, which creates some tremendous challenges, but it also creates some tremendous opportunities. We can't continue to educate folks in the models that we've used for the past 200 years and expect to get different results. That's the definition of insanity. Yet our bureaucracies are slow to morph, and there's a lot of pressure on them to continue to do what they've always done, because it does work for some folks. It just doesn't work for everybody. And I think the fact that we have so much difficulty breaking the cycle of poverty represents that our current educational models aren't tooled and equipped to make the kinds of changes required to actually break that cycle. What we're trying to do is innovate new models that can speed up a person's connection between education and employment. You don't see many people with good jobs involved in crime. You don't see many people with good jobs that are still living in poverty circumstances. They have the capacity then to move beyond that. Educating people is the great equalizer. Empowering people gives them the opportunity to make an individual choice, which is seminal to this American dream. That's the idea that you can work your way to whatever heights you aspire to is a part of what built this country. So for us, rethinking the high school experience, pushing more and more educational programming into the high schools that empowers those students to have a skill set that is marketable, that is gives them opportunity for career evolution. That is important. Today, students who can only go through the best high school models in this country, if that's all they have access to, they have no future in the workforce. So how do we fix that? We have to change our model of how we think about high school. I was just speaking with these folks earlier about, we have a proposal into the General Assembly to invest in 8 CTE centers around the region, 4 of them within the Shelby County schools, where we would actually be bringing Tennessee College of Applied Technology courses into those public schools every day in the classrooms. The students would be earning high school credit, college credit, and those students would have an ability to go to work. That doesn't mean they have to, but they would have an opportunity to go to work in a great career field, not a dead-end job. We've had students in our previous life across the river. We have 700 high school students coming to our community college campus every day. You have students that come in excited about learning to weld because they saw something on TV that encouraged them. They didn't like math, but when they learned that you had to know math to weld, they learned math. They didn't like to write, but when they learned that you had to be able to write in a business manner to be a welder, they learned how to write. They welded for 2 or 3 years and then decided they wanted to be something else. I can actually take you to a couple of young ladies who are today professional certified engineers who came to the college when they were in the 10th grade, learned how to weld because their father told them he needed a welder. They decided they didn't want to do that forever, but learned they could learn, and now they're professional engineers, and they came from circumstances as difficult as any that we can imagine. So the whole point is we have to change how we educate folks if we want different outcomes, and that education has to lead to a skill set that empowers my future, gives me the opportunity to choose who I become, and certainly puts me in a position to have something somebody wants to pay me for. That sense of pride, that sense of self-esteem is something that's missing from our equation today, and we have to reinsert that at every opportunity we can.
From Twitter, and you can get me at Radio Sister, Radio SISTAH. Sean, this is from Sean, this is for Dr. Anderson, and Sean wants to know, Dr. Anderson, how can mentoring aid student success, and does the ASD have mentoring in their system? Is this service available?
I appreciate that question. I've actually been mulling over that for the last few minutes. Something that Commissioner Love said earlier made me think about this, and I appreciate you for bringing this up. And this is around being honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves, being honest with each other about where we are and what we need to do, and what our part is in where we are today, both parents and school leaders, school systems, educators, et cetera. I will answer that question in just a second. I'd love to focus in on my area of focus, which is around the lowest performing schools in the state. These are priority schools. I'm going to tell you one fact and see if it surprises you at all. So in the state of Tennessee, 13% of students are black in our public schools. 92% of the students that are in priority schools are black. Does that surprise you? When I tell that to folks, most folks are like, no. There is no outrage. There is no surprise around that, because that is the way things are. And over the last several years, as we've started to really focus in on why this is, how we have let this system fail our kids for so many years, for decades, and are now starting to turn the corner, we can now start to say honestly, but what's my part in this? What is my part, Malika, in letting this happen? What is my part, mom, in letting this happen? What is my part, high school biology teacher, in letting this happen? Because we are all a part of this. And I will tell you that when we are thinking about the honesty in this, when we allow 96% of students to graduate from priority schools not ready for the career of their choice, we have done them a disservice and haven't been honest about what it means to be a graduate in this state and in this city. We have to have higher expectations for what we do. And I know that comes honestly. I know that the lower expectations come honestly among our parents and teachers because that's what we've let them do. I will tell you this though. If we decided right now, if we decided that this was not just about the students in our schools, not just about the kids. And I know some people will be surprised to hear me say this because I'm always talking about this is about the kids. We're going to focus on the kids because that's why we are doing it. But if we decided right now that we didn't get here and we're not going to get out of here if we are only focusing on the children, and we said instead, we have got to fix the adult experience and culture that is creating this failure for students, we would change things immediately. And that is where mentoring comes in. That's where having adults who have the welding jobs and more importantly, the engineering jobs and the dentistry jobs and run hair salons and who are the doctors of the future, if we can connect them with our students today and say, this is a loving adult who cares about your future and is invested in you taking the steps right now to realize your dream, we will change the life trajectory of thousands of students. This is not just about kids, this is about adults as well.
Thank you. Yeah. You have a question, sir. Come right to the microphone.
I'm Reverend Keith Williams with Tennessee BAEL, the Black Alliance for Educational Options. Thank you, Bev, for hosting the show. Thank all of the panelists for being here today. And I rose because I was concerned about all of the rhetoric around the parents. And I understand that this is a community problem and we've all got to be involved. But let's be clear. All of our children aren't prepared for college is not a result of them coming from homes that have parents that are strung out on drugs. Felt like I needed to say that. And not all of them are involved in gangs. It goes back to more of a systematic problem, I think, that Mr. White was talking about. And let me give you this example. Kristen Tate graduated number 9 in her class at Carver High School. She struggled to get an 18 on the ACT. Parents didn't do that. Parents didn't do that. When we start talking about children getting to the 12th grade that are reading on 3rd and 4th grade levels, parents didn't do that. When we start talking about the fact that Bev was saying that she gets students and Dr. Calhoun gets students that are not prepared to complete college, parents did not do that. And so what we're saying is we've all got some responsibility in this. And so my question is, what do we do for the parents that are trapped in neighborhoods? I sent my baby to Carver High School because that was the school everybody in her family went to. They got deep roots in their community. I didn't want her to go because she went to Bellevue, which is an optional school. She was at the top of her class there, but they wanted her to go to Carver. We allowed her to go to Carver, and today she's at Southwest. She's on Tennessee Promise. She's gonna do well, okay? We were there every day doing homework. So it's not just about parents not doing home. It's not just about them coming home to lights being off, okay? We're talking about this baby had A's and B's in all of her classes, but she still was not prepared, and that was not her fault. And when I went up there and talked to my state representative,
I really disagree, because I think at the end of the day, as I said, as Ms. Avant said, the school can't do it by itself. And so I've got 2 young kids, and I'm sure just like you, I mean, you know, we read with them, you know, we send them to get tutorials, and we involved. So I don't care what school my kids go to, they will do well. I'm just being honest, because they got support at home. And I know that every kid does not have that support. In many instances, it's not the fault of parents if they're doing their best. But I do think that when you frame the issue as parents versus school, then that doesn't get to the solution for the issue, because we're all we need all things to be hitting on all cylinders. When babies come to us, not kindergarten ready, we've got kindergartners who don't even recognize colors, don't recognize letters. Well, when you start from there, it's going to be difficult to get you where you need to be in the third grade. You learn to read to the third grade, you read, you learn. That's the most significant indicator of whether the kids going to graduate, whether the kids going to go to college. This goes on and on and on. So, I think at the end of the day, it's not a blame game, but I think as Anderson said, we have to be real. And if we're not preparing our kids before they get to school, it's going to be more difficult for them once they get to school. Now, I will agree with you that I think that in many instances, for years and years and years and years, the Memphis City schools, the city of Memphis, Shelby County, we failed a lot of these neighborhoods. And I think till we start talking about that together as a community, tone the rhetoric down on all sides, we're not going to be able to be as great of a city as we could possibly be.
I do want to interject.
I want to just piggyback on Superintendent Hopson. I think one thing that we need to be aware of when you have administrations that come in our communities to promote social promotions. If Johnny can't spell his name in the second grade, what makes you think he won't be able to spell it in the third? We got to create new norms, ladies and gentlemen, new norms of doing things. And we need to embrace that fact. And then we need to be aware of new trends. Now we talk about the at-risk kid and truant kid, but just a week or so ago, there was a young man in Florida posing to be an MD, a doctor. Okay? Printed his little MD certificate, got it hanging on the wall. And what's so scary about the whole situation, he had patience.
Yes. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So there's new trends that we need to be aware of, because if not, it's going to explode. Then we need to make sure that we tell our young people things that are available. We have an institution right here in our great city of Memphis called TK, okay? Where you can go and get trained at almost free, no tuition at all, through the Tennessee Promise. Welding, dentistry, barbering. I mean, I could go on and on. But I wish people who are listening just go by and take a tour of the opportunities that are here. But we must start creating new norms in order to combat this problem that we have. Thank you.
City Councilman Jones.
Thank you. I hope not to be too long-winded here, but I served on the school board for 7 years. We received an increase in funding my last year and my first year, out of 7. Now, to give you a little history here, prior to 2010, we had something called No Child Left Behind. And then it was replaced by something called Race to the Top. We have about 1,900, 2,000 schools in the state. According to No Child Left Behind standards, 50% of all of Tennessee schools would have had the same label that was exclusive to Memphis, called failing schools. So what do? They changed the rules. They basically say we can't have Brentwood, the most affluent county, which is in Williamson County, the most affluent county in the state. We can't have a school such as that with the same label as Memphis, failing. So what do? Something called Race to the Top. And Race to the Top, well, we'll do away with that. And we'll have the bottom 5 or the bottom 10. Well, if this is the bottom 5 and this is 100 right here, you're going to always have a bottom 5. If this is the range here, you're always going to have a bottom 5. So we create a system where we will rob the resources that are available to what's left. Now, one of the things that we did when I was on the school board, we had something called aligned instruction. It meant that if you lived in the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest, or the Southeast, and based upon our poverty level, Mama gets an eviction notice. She may live in Binghampton, but where she goes to where she can afford may be in Hickory Hill. When you have a disjointed system, at least with an aligned instruction, if you happen to be at Brewster, and then you had to go to Hickory Hill, you were somewhat assured that you're going to be on the same page, and you wouldn't necessarily lose a lot of the instruction that would take place when we have a disjointed system. If I'm not mistaken, in addition to the traditional Shelby County schools, we have 50 charter schools, disjointed. So when you have, so one of the things that we studied, we didn't just come up with this, we were not geniuses on the school board. We had to go through instruction, learn, see what other cities were doing in order to tackle this poverty issue, tackle this mobility issue. Some of our children in one school year go to 5 and 6 different schools. So how can you have a disjointed system where you don't have that instruction and you think children are going to learn? Now, going back to the funding, Ms. Avant, you talked about, you know, when we were in school, I remember I had no idea what a math coach, we probably didn't have them. We go back to the preparedness. So there are professionals in the schools. We had a principal, assistant principal, secretary. You know, we probably had other people, but a behavioral specialist, reading coach, math coach. Those new professionals require resources. Yesterday at the city council meeting, we had maybe 200 folks talking about parking on the grass. Okay? They were exercising, though. We received, I'm not even talking about the number of emails we got about this issue. But as Memphians, I challenge you, us. The county commission is the funding body for schools and for children. We need to pack the county commission. When I was on the school board, we received increased funding because Shelby County, the old Shelby County schools needed money. That's the only time Memphis got more money, and they bemoaned when Memphis needed the funding. When we were coming up, we may have had, out of 25 children in the class, we may have had 7 children who were not on grade level. And so the teacher could easily, okay, well, carve out a little time to work with those 7. Now we may have 15, 16 who are not on grade level. But when the county commission does not provide adequate funding, one of the first cuts, one of the most difficult cuts we made during the time that I was on the school board, teachers' assistants. That's where money goes, professionals, paraprofessionals like that. But when we go to the county commission and the county commission is tightening those purse strings, this whole Republican philosophy of less government, well, where do we get our resources for education from? We get them from the government. So we cannot buy into this rhetoric, we need less government, when our children have greater needs than they did in the past. But I encourage your listeners, because you know, we are being broadcast, show up at the county commission. Tell them to invest in largely Memphis children for those teachers' assistants, for those other professionals that can help lift the academic level of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you so much. A question for our panel from Facebook. Lamara, she says, my daughter is in the 6th grade at St. John Catholic School on Lamar. She was in the optional program at Riverwood Elementary from the 1st to the 5th grade. I'm a single mother of 2. I have no clue where to send her next year for the 7th grade. I wanted to send her back to a Christian-based school, but I can't afford it. And my ex-husband won't help me, and I don't know what grants or scholarships to apply for it. That's what she said. We live in the 38114 area now, and I am scared to send her to school in that area. She makes A's and B's and loves art and crafts. Please help me. Commissioner Avant.
Bev, one of the things that I want to tell the listeners is that in Shelby County schools, there are so many options. One of our flagship programs, which is our turnaround school model, is the I-Zone, the Innovation Zone. So for your listener, there are schools in Fraser, in South Memphis, in Whitehaven that now have I-Zone schools, and these are schools that have additional resources so that they have the things that Councilman Jones just talked about. You have reading coaches, you have math coaches, you have folks that are intensely focused on making sure that those kids are reading at grade level and then they are ready for college and career. I am a mother as well. I have a 10-year-old daughter who goes to Roselle Elementary. It's the Creative and Performing Arts School, a school of about 200 students that are focused on academics and the arts. So if her child is interested in academic and the arts, there are schools in every part of our community that could meet those needs. I want the listeners to understand that when they think about Shelby County schools, they have to think about the array of choices. There is no way, and my child went to preschool at a Catholic school as well, but there was no way that I could even imagine the options that are available to my specific child who had the academic potential, but she had the creative potential. But schools within our district, there's an array of STEM schools, there are STEAM schools that are focused on science, technology, art, and math. We have our career and technical programs. There are many ways that parents could have the needs of their individual children met based on the options that are available. We have just finished our open choice transfer, so if there are parents who are interested, call our Welcome Center, and we will direct them into ways to making sure that they meet those needs for those children.
You're listening to Community Education 911 Town Hall meeting here at LeMoyne-Owen College. We will continue our conversation right here with me, Bev Johnson, on the Bev Johnson Show, only on WDIA. We have a question, Commissioner Love, for our panel.
I have a question and I have a comment first. To any of the mothers who are listening, we are, and don't get it twisted, we are our child's first teacher. If we can roll weed, if we can twerk in the club, if we can stand in the line to get Jordans, if we can find out the password to our man's phone to see if he's cheating on us, we can make sure our children receive a quality education. I have a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 16-year-old. My children must read to me every day. And if any point I see my 2nd grader and my 5th grader reading on the same level, I'm going to the school first to ask them, what are you doing or what are you not doing? My 2nd grader, she's reading on a 5th grade level. My 5th grader is reading on a 7th grade level. My 10th grader, he's doing college work because I make him do that. I must make sure my children are successful. I received a GED because I dropped out of school at 16. Still no excuse. Still no excuse. Because if I can get on my phone and Google anything, I know if you Google how to be a better parent, how to become engaged, how to make sure your children receive a quality education, some link is going to pop up, some link. But my question is to juvenile court. We talk about the community being engaged, school board, we've talked about parents being engaged, City of Memphis, we've talked about making sure our youth have something to do. The biggest elephant in the room is, and this may not be your right now, they are paying their child support. All they want is an opportunity to be a part of their children's lives. Juvenile court is preventing that. Maximus is preventing that. And most importantly, the state of Tennessee is preventing that. So when we talk about parental involvement, how are you going to help these fathers? How are we going to help these fathers who only want to be a part of their child's lives? But juvenile court is only saying, show me the money. So how are we going to work together? How can we advocate together to the state of Tennessee to change some of these laws so fathers can be a part of their children's lives?
That's a good question, and it's one of the favorite questions I get because this is where I can try to explain. Juvenile court's just a court. We just hear cases, and it sounds very simple, but that's just the case. Child support is all run through the state of Tennessee, Department of Human Services and Maximus. If someone is not getting their child support, now I'll keep moving on, but if someone's not getting child support, juvenile court has no ability to order child support unless somebody brings an action first. If somebody chooses, either through DHS or on their own privately, to access child support, they must do that through that system. The court can't just say, you know what, this kid's been born, we're going to order child support. So That's one aspect of it. Everything has to take place through a court process. Divorce court can't go divorce somebody without being asked to divorce somebody. Bankruptcy court can't go bankrupt somebody unless somebody files a petition for bankruptcy. And juvenile court can't order child support unless somebody comes to request child support being ordered. Now, as for custody, that becomes an entirely different situation. There are laws basically that say that a mother who gives birth to a child, this is the state law, absent an order of paternity, absent an order of custody, is presumed to be the custodian. And so there is no law on the books that allows a father who has had a child unmarried to be able to get any sort of court-ordered visitation unless they access the courts. Okay, so that's where that problem runs in. So if you have a child that's been born out of wedlock, and mom has a child, and dad all of a sudden says, you know what, I want to have my kid for the weekend, and mom says no, that dad's hands are tied until he goes and accesses through the courts, makes a request to get either visitation or custody. At that point then, the courts have the ability to order visitation or order custody. And this is all absent child support, because even if a person doesn't pay child support or does pay child support, that has no bearing on custody or visitation. Those two things are often intertwined. And that's kind of a synopsis of where we are. If a father is not getting what he believes is a proper amount of time, or getting visitation or getting custody, that's something that he has to request the court to address. Tennessee law has changed recently, in which when two parties come to court for the first time to address a custody or visitation issue, the legislators have now put in that a father is to get the maximum allowable participation. It's not defined. It doesn't say the father must get half the time, the father must get 85% of the time or 15% of the time. It's just maximum participation.
If you want to see your child, you have to go to the second floor, if I'm not mistaken, and pay some more money so you can see your child. That father goes into juvenile court, 616 Adams. So it's not separate. You go to Maximus and apply for child support. Maximus is through the state. But the father walks into juvenile court, 616 Adams, and has to beg to see their child. And if they don't have the resources, they won't be able to see their child. But you're talking about a mother who's not married. What about these mothers who are married, and they go to Maximus and lie and say that they're not married, and the father is placed on child support, where the husband is placed on child support? And juvenile court, 616 Adams, still doesn't address the fact that a wife has committed fraud to put her husband on child support.
Getting back to the initial question. We have child support magistrates and we have juvenile magistrates. We have an agreement with the chancery courts and the circuit courts in Shelby County to take to hear all of the cases involving basically matters that are brought from child support, involving initial establishments of paternity. With that, the court is only, because it's done through DHS and because it's done through an agreement with the other courts, their focus is solely on child support. They have, fathers or mothers, have the ability to go to juvenile court and access custody and visitation. It's just done through a separate process in which that will be addressed at a different court hearing, a different court. Just like juvenile delinquency is not handled, child support and juvenile delinquency aren't handled together, termination of parental rights and child support aren't handled together. The custody and the juvenile court magistrate, the child support magistrates that we have are only permitted to hear, absent an agreement of parents, the child support issues. Now, if they both agree to visitation, visitation can be addressed to that issue. If not, then the father or mother, whoever the non-custodial parent is, would need to file a petition for visitation. And that's just the mechanism by which we are permitted to have, to make it as easy as possible to have all the court hearings in one building, instead of having child support in chancery court and in circuit court and in juvenile court, and having people run all over the 3 different courts to do child support. As for the other case, that's a case-by-case basis. If a mom is lying or a father is lying, that has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. There's no hard and fast rule that says that, well, basically, that has to be a case-by-case basis. If someone's perpetrating fraud, There has to be proof.
We're getting close to running out of time. Last words from our panelists this day. We will start right here with Dr. Ralph Calhoun as we talk community education 911.
Thank you, Bev. Education cannot occur in a vacuum. It cannot occur in a segmented fashion. We must see education, we must see the need for education and see the systems that are connected to it in order that our parents, our children, and as well as our teachers may be successful. And in order to do that, if you notice, many of my colleagues today are wearing suits, but I'm in a t-shirt today because today is Read Across America Day. And many of our faculty and teachers in our school systems are dressed this way. And as faculty of the Division of Education, we chose to join those public school teachers to show literacy solidarity and togetherness to support literacy and Read Across America. So my faculty are dressed like this today in order to support the faculty of our school system.
Thank you, Dr. Calhoun. Pastor Gibson.
Well, Dr. Calhoun, I only wore a suit because I knew Bobby White would have on the suit. Seriously, Jesus said, suffer the little children, let them come unto me. We're here not just because we care about children, but we believe that the one we serve in Jesus Christ cared about children. But it's hard to do so in a system that is high off the greatest drug in the history of America, and that is privilege. And when you're high off of privilege, it is hard to get in touch with the real thing. And unfortunately, in America, the elephant in the room, that is white privilege. So as our city councilman was sharing, Brentwood gets more money than it would in the hood simply because they have adjusted the system to that. I believe if we get back to the morals, we get back to what Christ said, whatsoever you do for the least of these, we'll find that not only will our society be better, but so will our educational system.
Thank you. Mr. Bobby White.
Well, Dr. Calhoun talked about this vacuum. I think, we all have heard of it takes a village. And so I think that specifically we have to realize in our schools, it needs to be about the community.
Yes.
We have to create schools that the community is proud of and have partnerships with all of the stakeholders that are around, right? Parents, students, teachers, faculty, clergy, businessmen, politicians, everyone aligned to the fact that these schools will be great and these students will be the citizens that lead our city and our country in the future. And until we're all on the same page about that, and I say this all of the time, we really have to be clear if that's what we want. I think we talk about it so much that I don't know if people are really clear that if we really do that, then who's going to be the laborers and who's going to be the prisoners? So we may not really want to fix it. We need to really make sure we understand that.
Thank you. Superintendent Dorsey Hopson.
Thank you, Bev. I really just want to thank you for putting this together, to pull this panel together to talk about an issue that's so important. I also want to thank the hard work of our school leaders and teachers. Teachers all around this county are teaching like their hair's on fire. I mean, school leaders are putting in more work than you can even imagine. And while there are a lot of challenges and issues ahead of us, there is good news. There is hope because of those hard-working teachers and school leaders. And lastly, Bev, I just want to say, I think that it was Nelson Mandela who said that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And for so many of our babies right here in Memphis-Shelby County, particularly right here in this zip code, we got to do some world changing. So looking forward to locking arms with everyone to continue this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Glenn Finter.
Well, thank you again, Bev, for hosting this. This is a wonderful opportunity. I know this has had to improve my efficiency rating significantly, being viewed with all these folks today. These are great people and obviously have great hearts for what they're doing. I think at the end of the day, respectfully, we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about why we can't make things different. We spend an inordinate amount of time talking about the challenges. At the end of the day, if we don't fix this, it's still lives that are lost. It's generations that are forsaken in terms of their capacity versus what they actually achieve. We have to find a way to fix this. It is going to take everybody. It's certainly going to take a lot of change and a lot of commitment, but at the end of the day, it does come down to expectations. If we expect things to get better and we work at it, they will. If we expect that we have no hope in them getting better, then we get that self-fulfilling prophecy as well. So I hope that we leave here today with a sense of urgency that everyone can have an elevated level of expectation and get involved, get engaged, whether you serve on the school board or city council or you're just a community activist. If we expect our students to have great schools, then we can produce that expectation. And without that, we're doomed.
Thank you. Lieutenant Tyrone Curry.
Thank you, Bev. Let me say this. Every 24 hours, 14 young men are gunned down in America every day, every 24 hours. And with that said, the police department has to change its traditional ways in doing business. And I must thank Mayor Strickland and Director Michael Rollins for allowing the community outreach police program for coming up with innovative ways and strategies on making our communities safer. And that has given us a roadway or a pathway into the schools where our children are. That's their headquarters. So we have been charged to make the schools and the surrounding communities safer. And I want to thank you. This is the catalyst. I want to thank WDIA for putting on this forum that can educate thousands of people that ordinarily we could not reach. Thank you for being the spark plug for this forum.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Malika Anderson.
Bev, let me piggyback on that thank you. This is the beginning of a very long-term, intense, concentrated, and collaborative effort to improve our schools. It cannot stop today with us talking about it. Our kids need us to stop talking about it, and as I tell my kids, be about it. So what I would love for us to do is be practical after this. I would love to connect with everybody on this panel and anyone in this room who wants to continue this conversation to identify some very specific things that we can do together to serve our students in these schools. And when we talk about the practical partnership between parents and community in schools, one very simple thing that we can do right now is going to sound simple, but it is real. Parents, you tell us today that you are going to be enrolling your children in a particular school next year, so that we can be ready for you on day one. If you communicate with us, we can make sure that we have our staffing, have our support services, have our relationships with community partners ready to serve you on day one. So my big ask for your listeners is for parents to enroll your children today in the school that you expect to be in next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Griffin.
Bill, I want to say thank you so very much for putting on this event. It's really, really been informative. Our mantra at the Memphis Office of Youth Services is empowering our youth for positive results. Now, how can we make that a true statement and not one of an apology? You put God first in everything that you do. Then we build strong, workable relationships. Then we dialogue with school leaders, stakeholders, on how they can probably enhance their efforts to help us service more children, maybe from leasing buildings and what have you, so we can service more. And we have to realize, most of all, there are no spectators of what we're going through. Everybody has to play a role, not sitting on the sideline, not trying to find fault. These are our children in Memphis, not Little Rock, not Dallas, Memphis. And once we understand the true nature of unification, I think we can start this ball rolling. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shante Avant.
Bev, again, we want to thank you for spurring this very important dialogue about community education and the importance of education in our communities. I would like to ask our listeners, there's a quote that I try to live my life by, which is by Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. So I think all of our panelists today have said in many different ways, there's ways that people can get involved. I'm hopeful that one thing that your listeners take away from today is how will I be that change towards public education. You have to think about the Shelby County schools. We educate over 100,000 students every year. We're the largest public education system in the state of Tennessee. So in order for us to be successful, everyone in this room and everyone in our community has to have a part in what that success looks like. So I'm asking your listeners to think about the change they want to be.
Thank you. And Attorney Thomas Coupe.
Just want to leave again on the final note of positivity. 110,000 kids, almost over 100,000 kids never ever see any sort of issue with juvenile delinquency at all. That's a positive. We hear so many stories of negativity of how these kids nowadays are getting in so much trouble. The news is over 90% of the kids every single day are doing nothing but doing good things and staying out of trouble. Embrace your kids, encourage them, and love them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a wonderful forum. I'd like to say very quickly, thank you to LeMoyne-Owen College. Thank you to Dr. Andrea Miller, President of LeMoyne-Owen College. Thank you to Daphne Thomas, Director of Public Relations and Marketing for LeMoyne-Owen College. Big hugs and kisses to Dr. Cynthia Alexander, Director of Family and Community Engagement for the Shelby County Schools, who embraced me, who helped me with this. Thank you to Big Frank, as we call him, and our iHeart promotions team, and our iHeart media engineer, Brian J. Give them a big hand. Thank you for the Shelby County Schools for putting this on communications. Stephanie Efferson and John Best, we thank you. And my girl, she's the bomb. She helped me. I had to tell it. Commissioner Stephanie Love, I love you, sister. Thank you. And thank you all to the listeners who were listening today. My last words I want to say to you. Good people give you happiness. Bad people give you experience. The worst people give you a lesson. And the best people give you memories. I hope you have memories from today's Community Education 911 Town Hall meeting. I'm Bev Johnson. You've been listening to The Bev Johnson Show on WDIA.